crazy. I mean, at the time, I just thought to myself, can I do this? There's no playbook for this. There's a lot of pressure. I've never built anything from scratch.
She's the woman who helped turn a city into a startup capital and a bold idea into a billion dirham force for change. Her Excellency Najla Al Midfa doesn't just build businesses, she builds ecosystems.
The first audacious decision I made was probably when I was 18 years old.
Who gave you that foresight and vision of dreaming bigger and wanting to do more?
Never forget that interview. I walked out and something within me said, this is where I want to be.
How do you turn a blank page into something that has lasting impact?
There's a lot of magic that happens at more serious elevations. We had just summited Mount Kilimanjaro, and on our way down we were having a conversation about Sharjah and how it's a magnet for young talent, and how can we provide them with a platform to take their dreams and turn them into their own businesses to help build the future of the city's economy and the country's economy as well.
Are you looking for the next Elon Musk?
Definitely the top criteria we look for is...
Have you ever been underestimated yourself?
I think it's irrelevant whether people think you are capable or not. The results speak for themselves.
She's the woman who helped turn a city into a startup capital and a bold idea into a billion dirham force for change. Her Excellency Najla Al Midfa doesn't just build businesses, she builds ecosystems. And as the founding CEO of Sheraa, she has transformed Sharjah into one of the region's most exciting entrepreneurial hubs, igniting over 450 startups, fueling $290 million in investment, and creating thousands of jobs. And now, with the $273 million Emirates Growth Fund, she's taking UAE-born companies to the global stage, proving that ambition here has no borders. Today on She Leads, we're talking the defining moments and unshakable vision that have turned her into one of the most powerful voices in business. Your Excellency, it's fantastic to have you with us.
Thank you so much, Sally. It's great to be here.
Najla, you've quietly but powerfully really shaped the entrepreneurial landscape here in the UAE. But what's a bold decision that you had to make that most people don't know about?
It's a question I get asked a lot, and I think I think about that a lot as well. I think people are expecting this one cinematic, glamorous, defining moment, a fork in the road where I made a big decision. But to be honest, I think it's really been more a series of small decisions that I have made that to anyone else, by the way, in a different time and a different place may seem like unremarkable, ordinary decisions. But in my world, required me to really tune into my inner voice, my inner compass, my gut, my intuition, whatever you want to call it, and to really find within me the courage to follow through on that intuition, even if it wasn't the popular opinion at the time. And I think that's something that I've always thought was the boldest possible thing to do in a world where everybody wants you to be something else or someone else. To be able to really stay true to yourself is probably the boldest thing that you can do. And I think for me, when I think about, when I talk about this pattern of decisions that I've made, perhaps the most, or the first, let's say the first audacious decision I made was probably when I was 18 years old. Up until then, I had lived a sheltered life with a family here in Sharjah. And then at 18, I suddenly found within me this voice saying, no, but I want to go abroad and study. And again, unremarkable now because, of course, a lot of women are going, Emirati women are going abroad and studying. But at the time, I'm talking in the 90s, there was a certain stigma around an Arab woman living, studying abroad alone. And so to be able to, again, this is not to say I didn't have the support from my family, from my parents specifically, but when you think about the wider society, the more expanded family, there were definitely questions there, more from a place of concern and worry rather than anything else. But the ability to really stand with that decision and say, no, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to apply. And I applied to various universities, got into one of them and really stuck with that decision, I think was for me where it all started. I gave myself the space to really discover myself there in the UK, away from the privileged life that I had led over here. Suddenly, I needed to open a bank account. I needed to pay the rent, needed to figure out how to cook for myself. That decision was so important to me that, again, I think it created a bit of a domino effect after that. So even when I came back to the UAE after my degree, the expectation, and again, it's just a reflection of the time, we're talking about early 2000s, was that as an Emirati, most Emiratis are joining the government or the public sector. And I decided to start my career in the private sector. And I remember the first company that I joined, PwC, I was literally the only Emirati there at the time. Again, this has changed completely now. PwC is one of the biggest employers of young Emirati talent. But at the time, it felt like a bold decision. And it's not about rebellion for the sake of rebellion. Like I said, it's really about staying true to yourself and the voice that's within you. And then conversely, I went back to the US, did my master's, worked in New York for a few years. And then everybody expected me to come back to the UAE and continue in the private sector. And suddenly I found myself joining, at that point, the private sector, a local government entity, Khalifa Fund, to support SMEs. You're talking about 2010. At the time, entrepreneurship was still very much in its nascent stages. People weren't talking about entrepreneurship.
People didn't even call it that.
They didn't even call it. In Arabic, and we called it riyadat al-a'mal. Now, the terminology itself hadn't really been set. And so to make that decision, because I walked into that interview with the CEO, I'll never forget that interview. It was both the CEO and the deputy CEO. And I walked out and something within me said, this is where I want to be. I've spent the last decade building up my skills, investing in myself. And now I have an opportunity to give back. So to take those skills and to help the next generation of entrepreneurs or the next generation of talent. And so it was a decision that surprised a lot of people, but I knew it was the right decision for me. And then probably in the more recent past, I think perhaps the boldest decision ever was when Sheikh Abdur, the conversation with Her Excellency Sheikh Abdur Al-Qasimi happened, and the opportunity to start Sheraa in Sharjah. 2016 was when it launched. 2015 was when the conversation first happened.
10 years ago.
It's literally 10 years next month. So it's crazy. I mean, at the time, I just thought to myself, can I do this? There's no playbook for this. Suddenly you're building an entrepreneurial ecosystem in a city. There's a lot of pressure. Obviously, there are expectations. I've never built anything from scratch. But again, another thing that I've learned on my journey, if it scares you and you're excited to do it, it's probably a good thing to do.
You have to tell us where that conversation happened with Sheikh Abdur.
Yeah, that's a special one. I think there's a lot of magic that happens at more serious elevations. So we had just summited Mount Kilimanjaro, and on our way down on the descent, we were having a conversation at the time about Sharjah and how it had, it's a magnet for talent, especially young talent, given that it's a capital of higher education. And how can we take this young talent and provide them with a platform to take their dreams and their aspirations and turn them into their own ventures and their own businesses to help build the future of the city's economy and the country's economy as well. And that's where it all started. And so looking back again, I think a lot about Steve Jobs' quote, you can't connect the dots looking forward, you can only connect them looking back. And this, where I am today was the result of a series of decisions that were made over the course of my life, and not really one big, bold decision that defined everything.
But what shaped you, or who shaped you into who you became today? Who gave you the courage? Who gave you that, foresight and vision of dreaming bigger and wanting to do more?
I think over time, one of the things that I've learned is that you can find inspiration wherever you look. There's no doubt that growing up, the first place you look for in terms of inspiration is the home. And I was very lucky to have parents I'm the eldest of 4 girls, just to kind of give that context. I have a father who is and continues to be very supportive of a woman's role in society, in the home, and in the economy, and was always very encouraging, even though a lot of times when I talked about this decision to study abroad, it was actually him who probably got the brunt of that pressure as to why would you send your eldest daughter abroad. And he really stood by me. He reinforced that decision and said, if it's in the name of education, we will support her. And the same with my mother. My mother is very ambitious. They're both very ambitious in their own right. My mother plays bridge professionally. She's actually, interestingly, they've just qualified for the World Cup of Bridge.
That's wild.
Yeah, and so she's
amazing.
in Copenhagen next week, participating in the World Cup of Bridge, representing the UAE. So she's been very ambitious in her own way. She got married, learned basically photography as well as art, and has taken that on as a serious hobby as well. So there was a lot of ambition there, and definitely a very high standard that they held me to. So it wasn't just that, go to school and we don't mind what the results are. The expectation was excellence at every point. And I think that in many ways shaped me. But like I said, I found inspiration everywhere I've looked, whether it's the friends I had at schools, whether it's the teachers that I had in school who encouraged me, again, to find my own voice. Whether it was my grandparents, I really, and I continue to do that today. It's not about age. It can be people that are younger than you. A lot of the younger entrepreneurs that surround me today continue to inspire me. And so in many ways, I think I've been shaped by many giants that came before me, but also a generation that continues to teach us as well.
Having watched you, especially like at Sharjah Entrepreneurship Festival and around young people, you have that thing, that magnetic thing that brings young people to you, and it's like you're getting inspired by them as much as they are by you.
It's a symbiotic relationship.
It's amazing.
It is.
But you, of course, you did your MBA at Stanford.
Yes.
What is the biggest lesson that they don't teach you at business school?
I think it's not that they don't teach you. I think it's just that they can't teach you. I mean, we say this about entrepreneurship, right? I mean, I can give you, tens of books on entrepreneurship, and you can sit through many classes, but until you're in the arena, building yourself, you just never learn. And so we obviously did a lot of case studies when it came to leadership. And I'm talking specifically about leadership because I think at management level, there are a lot of tools that business school gives you that are genuinely very useful, a lot of frameworks and so on. But I think there's nothing that really prepares you for being in the middle of the arena, having to make difficult decisions when tensions are riding high, knowing that the decision you make will ultimately impact people, impact people's lives, impact the reputation of an organization potentially. And so I think these are high stakes moments, and it's not a theoretical concept where you just turn to the end of the case study and say, oh, that's what the protagonist did in the end. So there's no right or wrong answers, A lot of times they're suboptimal decisions that you make, and you have the humility to acknowledge, okay, I didn't think that would happen, but I learned. But many times, again, it also goes right, and you're very proud of the team that helped you get there. I think for me, the biggest example of one of the things that really business school doesn't prepare you for is the Sharjah Entrepreneurship Festival and organizing that. First of all, the way the idea came about, again, a conversation with Sheikh Abdur this time in a different destination. This was at the Dead Sea in Jordan. And I remember it was probably around May or June that year. This was the year that we launched Sheraa, so 2016. And we talked about, apologies, not 2016, it was 2017. And she asked me, what are some of the ideas that you have for us to scale our impact? And I said, one of the things that we need to do is really convene the entrepreneurial community. I don't feel that we are doing that enough in the UAE, and we have an opportunity to do that in Sharjah. And so she said, great, let's do it. And we had about, between me coming back around May or June and the first festival being held in November, and a small team of probably around 10 people to really pull this off. And, again, anyone who's organized an event can tell you, you do not sleep in the days leading up to the event. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. And I mean, we had now I can look back and laugh. I mean, we had some of, for example, opening lineup of speakers. Suddenly you get a call in the morning, your key speaker had an emergency and can't turn up. What do you do? The team is looking at you. They want you to make a decision. And you need to do whatever. And, there are thousands of eyes looking, wondering what's happening. And it's on you to make that decision and to make it, I think, with conviction. And like I said, with humility. A lot of times the decision may not be the right decision, but it's a learning experience. And like I said, it's experiential learning. It's not something that can be taught in a classroom or a textbook.
When you're doing things like that, implementing things like that, like Sheraa, for example, like the Entrepreneurship Festival, you are very focused on impact.
Yes.
And I'd love to know from you, Najla, how do you do that? How are you creating from scratch? How do you turn a blank page into something that has lasting impact, that has been going a decade and even longer now and getting bigger and bigger every year?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I feel like that's where I enjoy it the most. Taking a blank canvas and turning that into a reality is where I thrive.
Yeah.
And I think about that because I get asked, again, it's another question that I get asked a lot. We did it with Sheraa, we did it with the festival, we're doing it now with the fund as well, with the Emirates Growth Fund. How do you take an idea that's on paper and turn it into something real? And I call that the 0 to 1 stage. So if I think about, Sheraa in the last 10 years, there was the 0 to 1 stage, which was your first maybe 2 to 3 years. And then there's the 1 to 10 stage, which requires a completely different skill set. But if you're asking me about the 0 to 1 stage, what are the 3 things that we need in order to bring something to life? Number 1, you need a North Star. So, and I think Sheikh Abdur helped a lot with that, because one of the exercises that we did when we first started Sheraa was the magazine cover exercise, where we said, okay, let's draw the magazine cover. What would be the magazine cover 10 years down the line for Sheraa? And I still remember the magazine cover that Sheikh Abdur designed. And it was basically a cover with basically tiled, almost 100 startups with the headline, "Born in Sharjah, made for the world." And that became my North Star. I said, okay, every decision I make needs to lead us one step closer to Sharjah being a place where some of the best entrepreneurs are born and where they can thrive. And so setting that North Star was important. You have your why. The why becomes very clear. However, the path to that why, you need to be flexible on. Because no matter what you have on paper, whatever plans you have, they never pan out the way you expect them to. And so you need to be adaptable and be flexible about how you get there. So that's one thing. Number 2 is surrounding yourself very quickly with your first believers. So what are your first believers? Obviously with Sheraa, we had our first believer in Sheikh Abdur, His Highness, Dr. Sheikh Sultan Al-Qasimi, the ruler of Sharjah, was obviously one of our first believers. And then you had the initial team members that joined, who literally believed in the vision. They didn't have clear JDs when they joined. We just needed to get this off the ground. They were the first entrepreneurs who took a chance on us as an entrepreneurship center, knowing that we hadn't run programs in the past, but still wanting to be part of this movement. There were partners, corporate partners that came on board. Literally within the first few months, we had partners like Air Arabia, Crescent Enterprises, all of them coming on board and really committing to be part of that journey. And I think that helps a lot. And then the final step is really what I call a bias for action. Not getting stuck in analysis paralysis and just making decisions quickly and being willing to try, knowing that it will never be perfect the first time around. There's this famous saying in entrepreneurship that if you're not embarrassed by the first version of your product, you shipped it too late. I think it was Reid Hoffman who said that. And I think in many ways, I look back on our initial programs or the initial version of the festival, and I smile because obviously now it's in a completely different place and there was a lot we didn't know then. But we had to do whatever we could to get an initial version out, an initial prototype out. So there's a bias for action, and finally leaving your ego in the parking lot. In the initial days, you're the receptionist, you're the janitor, you're the marketing manager, you're the HR manager, you're everything, and all of that before noon on the same day. There literally is this attitude of everyone rolls their sleeves up and gets it done. And I think those are the things that really get it off the ground in the early days. It's great for the first, like I said, for the first couple of years, but then the next stage of a company's growth, which is what I call the 1 to 10. So we've done 0 to 1. The 1 to 10 requires a very different skill set, which is a bit more disciplined. You're now starting to bring in structure, you're bringing in governance, processes. People want very clear roles, definitions in terms of what are their KPIs, what are their targets, and so on. So how do you do that? How do you bring in that structure? How do you institutionalize without losing the soul that you built in 0 to 1? And for me, that was the stage that really challenged me and pushed me to grow the most, because my natural tendency is to go more the 0 to 1 approach, where everyone does whatever it takes to get it done. But like I said, in order to institutionalize these platforms, I've had to also learn that second set of skills as well. And I think both are equally important.
I think we're going to get more into the second part in a minute,
Yeah.
but you said something really important that I think a lot of people want to know how to do.
Yeah.
And it's like you said, you started with Sheraa, with the festival. You'd never done it before.
Yes.
You'd never started anything from scratch.
Yes.
So founders, when
Yes.
they're coming up and they have an amazing idea, but maybe you're thinking, I've never done this before. How do you get yourself to that stage where you just go in and you do it anyway?
Yeah, I mean, I think this comes back to this idea where if it scares you, it's probably a good thing to do. But in today's world, I mean, again, that the entrepreneurship ecosystem has changed so much in the last 10 years. I mean, you're talking about, like I said, 10 years ago, we're talking about defining on and coming up with a term for entrepreneurship in Arabic, or maybe 15 years ago. And now today we're talking about tools like ChatGPT, where you can really research.
You've got the support now.
You've literally got the support.
Yeah.
I mean, it's obviously, one, in terms of technology, and two, in terms of the institutions that the country has put in place, institutions like Sheraa, like the Emirates Growth Fund, where there's an entire network of people to support you. So I think when I think about entrepreneurs in their early stages, and we do have a lot of programs that are also the 0 to 1 stage for entrepreneurs, where they're just coming up with their ideas and want to test them out. I really think I wish we had these programs when we were younger. So there's no lack of support, whether it's role models of entrepreneurs who have done it before you. And we now have stories like Kareem, and we have stories like Noon. So a lot of great entrepreneurial stories that we can look to and learn from. There's resources at our fingertips in terms of technologies. There are communities that we can tap into. And I think really ultimately what it comes down to is more the inner decision to just have the courage to take the first step. I think it was Martin Luther King who said it, that you don't need to see the full staircase. You just need to take that first step in faith, and I think having that faith is really important.
I love that you mentioned the Emirates Growth Fund there. This is really being touted as a game changer. We're talking 1 billion dirhams here, $273 million
That's right.
now in investment.
Yes.
That is coming through this fund. You talk about it being for the missing middle, an overlooked but promising group of founders
Yeah.
who need support to scale.
Yeah.
So talk to us a bit more about who these founders are and what kind of support do they need?
Yeah. I mean, it's not just a group of founders. When you think about it, these SMEs actually represent 94% of the UAE's companies. They contribute over 60% to the UAE's GDP, and they employ over 86% of the UAE's private sector workforce. And yet, when you look at the support that they need as they grow, and I came across a lot of these stories as well at Sheraa, you have the early stage support that venture capitalists typically provide. So you're starting out, you've got an idea, maybe you've got an initial product. Venture capitalists will typically provide you the support to scale that product or that company very quickly. But you need to be a tech company, first and foremost, and you need to be willing to grow it to the point where it is a unicorn. And then the other end of the spectrum, if you like, is private equity, which typically invests in bigger companies. They typically take control of bigger companies. Often these are buyout or turnaround situations. And then you've got this entire middle in between, all these SMEs that are neither really in tech and have no ambitions to become a unicorn overnight. They're not looking to sell their company to a private equity player, and nor can they really tap into bank lending, because they may not have the collateral that they require. In fact, less than 10% of bank lending in the UAE actually goes to SMEs. So if you think about it, it's actually a triangle. You've got bank lending, you've got venture capital, you've got private equity, and you've got these SMEs in the middle that really don't have access to the support that they need to scale and grow. And I say support because it's not just capital. So the Emirates Growth Fund was established as a 1 billion dirham fund with investment from the Emirates Development Bank to support SMEs in 4 key sectors, driving the future of the UAE's resilience, economic resilience. 1, we've talked about, is healthcare. Number 2 is manufacturing. Number 3, food security. And number 4, which again is applicable in all businesses, is advanced technologies as they relate to these sectors. What we do is we look at SMEs in those sectors that are generating at least 10 million dirhams in revenue and are looking to scale and grow without giving up control. The founder is still very dedicated to the business, but requires the capital and the support in order to grow. We write checks typically between 10 and 50 million dirhams. We take a minority stake in the company so that, again, control stays with the founder. We typically take 20 to 40%, but then we actively help the founder in their next stage of growth. So we talked about 0 to 1. They're obviously past that 0 to 1 phase, and they're in that 1 to 10 phase, where they need to institutionalize the business, they need to put in place the right governance, they need to bring on board the right leadership talent to help that business grow. And that's where we can come in and give them that support, help them access value chains, help them access new markets, not just in the UAE, but regionally and globally as well. And so that is the support that we are looking to provide to SMEs in the UAE in those key sectors.
What are you looking for in the founders themselves when there's that criteria, when you're evaluating these businesses? They might have the balance sheet.
Yes.
But what are you looking for in terms of the founders themselves?
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question because, they ask us what are the criteria, and you're absolutely right. Investability or the balance sheet, yes, is one of the criteria. The impact, the economic impact that this company has the potential to create is another. But I would say definitely the top criteria we look for is a founder, because that chemistry between the investor, effectively you're coming on board as a co-founder, if you think about it. And so it's really important to have chemistry with the person running that company. It's a relationship that needs to be built on trust. It's a relationship where you need to feel that you have a say in the company's growth. But at the end of the day, also it's a relationship that's built on mutual respect. And I think that, again, it's not something that we can always take for granted. A lot of founders are very protective about their companies and see it as their babies and don't want others to get involved in decisions that will impact the growth of that company. And so I think it's about a founder that's at that right stage and is open to bringing on board the right partner to help with that next stage of growth.
Because it's like what they say, that wonderful saying, what got you here won't get you there.
Absolutely.
And so do you find that sometimes you meet founders who are just not ready to scale, even they don't have the mindset? Is there a certain thing in the mindset that they need?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's not so much that they're not ready to scale, but perhaps they're scaling in different ways. Either their scale is very much growth at all costs, which doesn't really work for us, or perhaps not at the pace that we're expecting that growth. So I think the pace is an important piece, but also the willingness to take, I think a key part of it actually, now that I think about it, is a willingness to take on feedback. Yeah. And the willingness to say, okay, there may be someone else out there that has a better way to do this and has value to add to this journey as well. So I think those are the key things that we look at. It's not really about the business plan as much as it is about the personality.
If we're going to be building the champions of the future, those that are regional and global powerhouses, what needs to change in the investment landscape? This is a very important, start from the Emirates Growth Fund, but what do we need to see changing in the investment landscape?
So I think that there are multiple things that need to change. So when you think about the capital stack, you have the early investors on one side, and then you have the private equity investors on the other, and there's an entire middle that needs to be filled in. One of the answers is growth equity, which of course Emirates Growth Fund is doing, but there are many other instruments that need to come into play to help provide fit-for-purpose capital for the companies that are growing here in the region. Number two is patience. I think the reality is, in order to go from a local SME to a national or a regional champion, it takes time. You know, I mean, we're not talking about years, you're talking about often decades. And, you know, you look at some of the family businesses, generations. And so I think the willingness to have a long-term investment horizon, which is something that we have at EGF, we call ourselves flexible patient capital. So I think that's key. Number three is, it's not just about the capital at the end of the day. What will get you from here to there, as you like to say, is not just the money, but also the ability to bring on board the right talent, whether that's at the board level, whether it's at the team level, the ability to access new markets. I think those sorts of things, that sort of support is key for us to provide as whether it's government entities or ecosystem supporters as a whole. And then, of course, policies. I mean, at the policy and the regulation level, you also want policies that support these companies as they grow, whether it's helping them plug into some of the biggest value chains in the country or in the region, whether it's helping them export their products. The UAE is obviously signing a lot of CEPA agreements with different countries, and that helps our companies here in the UAE export their products and services to global markets. So I think it's a combination of things. It's mindset, it's capital, it's operational support, it's policy, all coming together to take these early stage companies and help them endure basically into bigger and more impactful.
So then, are you looking for the next Elon Musk?
I think it's really important to me. In fact, I would say that's one of my key measures of success, when we no longer need to turn to innovators and entrepreneurs in other countries as our measure of success or as our benchmark, with all due respect, of course, to the Elon Musks and the Mark Zuckerbergs and the Steve Jobs of the world. They've all had, no doubt, their impact on the global stage, but I see no reason why we can't have the next Mohammed Al-Abbars and the next Rajal Al-Girgs and the next Lubna Ulayans coming out of the UAE and growing businesses that are as big, as innovative, as impactful as the SpaceXs and the Metas of the world.
What is it that you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? Mary Oliver.
That's right. Yeah, one of my favorite poems, or a quote from one of my favorite poems.
It comes to mind because you're somebody who talks a lot about purpose.
Yes.
And it's central to everything that you do. So how did you find your purpose?
I think there wasn't any one particular moment that I can call an epiphany where I found my purpose. And I'm really trying to be as honest as possible in these answers, because I think it's important for younger viewers, for the next generation, to know that it's okay to live your way into your purpose and not to have the answers on day one. The framework, if you like, that I've used over time is basically the Japanese Ikigai framework. What is it that I love doing? What is it that I'm good at? What is it that answers a certain need in the world? And what is it that I can be rewarded for doing? And in that intersection lies your purpose. But it isn't about reading a book. It isn't about going on a retreat and finding it is genuinely just walking the path, trying different things, having different conversations, and you eventually find yourself in a space where you're doing something where your energy flows naturally. And being open to the idea also that your purpose evolves over time. And I think that is also true. I mean, in my own journey, I've seen that purpose evolve. Maybe the core has always stayed the same in terms of building bridges between what is and what is possible, whether it's building bridges between talent and opportunity, or between capital and scaling companies. But ultimately, that purpose has always tweaked and evolved based on the new situations that I've found myself in as well. So I think having an open mind about it and not having a fixed mindset about this is my purpose and I do nothing else.
What role does intuition play for you and in business?
Yeah, I think it's an underrated skill set to be able to trust your intuition. Mm-hmm. I've never made a decision in my personal life or in my career where I followed my intuition and live to regret it. That's all I can say. I mean, it may have worked out in different ways had I done the more logical thing or listened to popular opinion. But ultimately, I've always thought about, I did it my way in the way that I felt was right for me. And I think that's really helped, it's helped me be authentic in terms of what I was building, whether it was a platform that I was building, whether it's a team that I'm building, whether it's entrepreneurs that we're supporting. I've always listened to my intuition in terms of who are the right people for this team, what are the right things that we should be doing as a platform, because I think one of the hardest things I've learned is, especially as a leader, a lot of opportunities come your way. And the most difficult thing I've learned is how to say no to them. And a lot of that is based also on your intuition and knowing what's right for your mission, what's right for the organization's mission, what's right for the team, and not what's right for, like I said, external viewers.
How do you cultivate that? Because some people don't have that strong intuition that you have. So what do you do to really cultivate it so that you can listen to it and it is correct when you need it to be?
I think it's practice. I think it's come over time. I don't think it's a skill set. Like I said, I honed it from when I was a younger girl at 18 and learning to trust that inner voice and to build
that gut feeling.
Yeah. I mean, it's now it's become an inner compass where I think I can, but even in today's world, again, like I said, everybody has an opinion on what you should be doing. Even with where I am today, in my life, in my career, everyone will venture unsolicited opinions on what you should be doing. And I think it's great to listen. I never dismiss those opinions. I listen to them. I'm grateful for them. I respect the opinions, but ultimately I've learned to just trust my inner compass when making that final decision. And that is just, I think, pattern recognition over time and just repeating it over and over again until you really become comfortable with it. And then once you make the decision, just trusting it and not overthinking it afterwards as well, I think is key.
What's the hardest lesson that you've learned in leadership and how does it shape how you lead today?
Really, the hardest thing has been learning to say no, because so many opportunities come your way, both personally in terms of ideas that you can be part of and platforms that you can be part of and roles that you can partake in. And ultimately, you realize you really can't do it all. And it's important for you to realize that as a leader, because ultimately that also then reflects on the organization. Because if you're doing it to yourself, you're probably also doing it to the organization you're leading, where you're taking on all these great and exciting and different opportunities that maybe aren't directly related to your mission, but because they seem exciting and you don't want to let them go, what ultimately happens, especially when ultimately you have a limited budget, you have limited resources, you have limited energy, is you create burnout. And that's for yourself and it's for the wider team. And so and I struggle with it, I'll be honest. It's not something that I've fully perfected yet, but really staying disciplined and thinking about every opportunity that comes our way or comes my way through various filters. Am I the right person for this? Do I have the capacity to give it my best energy? Is it directly linked to the mission that I'm serving? And if the answer is no, then to decline, again, with gratitude, with respect, nominate someone else, whether it's another person, whether it's another organization. But drawing those boundaries ultimately becomes very important in your success.
It's so critical to be able to set boundaries and to know when you should say yes and when you should say no. It's something that a lot of us struggle with. I feel like women have, that difficulty as well with things like that too. But let's talk a bit more about women in business.
Yes.
Two of the biggest challenges that we've seen for women in business are being taken seriously and also getting the funding for their ideas. Is this what you've seen in your experience, and how do we bridge that?
I don't know about being taken seriously because I can only speak from my own experience, both as a woman and also obviously leading the Sheraa platform over the last decade, is that, we're very proud of the fact that of the hundreds of companies, how many now, maybe almost 500 companies that are in our portfolio, over 50% are led by women. And I can assure you they are never taken less seriously than their male counterparts. So I hope that that's changing. My experience is that is changing. However, on the capital side, again, it comes back to, it's not that women are not being given the capital because they're women, but I think it's sometimes, again, that capital stack, it's about having the right kind of capital for different ambitions. Venture capital, which is typically where most people go in order to raise investment, is to VCs. But venture capital is built for a very specific kind of company. And some women are building those companies, and we definitely should have more venture capital going to those women. But a lot of women are building businesses that fall more in the SME space, and they're businesses that are important, that are tackling problems that they are passionate about, but aren't growing at the rate that is required by VCs in order to generate their return. And so because we don't have other options right now, and now we're starting to see that, obviously, again, like I said, the Emirates Growth Fund is a great example of that, different instruments on that capital stack to serve different purposes. I think you'll see more women be able to raise funding. Is it a gap? Yes. Does it need to be filled? 100%. But I'm starting to see solutions now come up to help plug that funding gap.
I think when I was talking about in terms of being not taken seriously, it's more about being underestimated. Have you ever been underestimated yourself?
I honestly don't know. I may have been, but I've never underestimated myself, and I think that's what matters most. And because I ultimately think everybody's going to have their opinion on what you can and can't do. As long as you have that inner confidence to know what you're capable of, to be willing to put yourself out there and to deliver, I think it's irrelevant whether people think you are, capable or not. The results speak for themselves.
I love that answer so much. AI has, of course, changed everything across every industry. So for you right now in the investment space that you are and in the entrepreneurial space, how are you seeing AI is really becoming a game changer, and what should founders do to be ready for what's coming?
Yeah, I think, again, it's funny because for the longest time, and we continue to speak about a growth mindset and adaptability, and AI has really pushed us to make sure that all of us, irrespective founder or not, have that growth mindset and that willingness to learn, because it's not that AI is there and it's a fixed skill set. Even AI itself is constantly evolving. And so we need to make sure that we're able to consistently learn. But like I said earlier, what's happening with founders is AI has been a game changer in so many ways, because a lot of the journey of coming up with an idea, building your business model, building that initial product, a lot of it has been accelerated by AI. And I think, again, for me, it's something that I'm really excited about, because when you think about what I'm passionate about is also democratizing entrepreneurship and making sure that everybody, irrespective of who they are, has the opportunity to pursue their entrepreneurial dreams and their entrepreneurial endeavors. And AI really makes that possible. I think about that even from a Sheraa perspective. Okay, we've got 3 physical centers, but ultimately, how many people can we reach without technology physically? So I think having technology, and more specifically, tools that combine AI, are going to be game-changing when it comes to venture building.
How do we make sure that we keep people at the center of what we're doing as we see technology taking over more and more?
I think it's important to kind of, and I think this is also going to be a reflection on our education systems, to be honest, is to really consistently and constantly provide the next generation and ourselves with, when we talk about that moral compass and the right values, because ultimately we are the ones shaping AI. And so for us to kind of keep the human at the center, we need to have that human first value ourselves. So I think it goes back to education and really making sure that these values are instilled at an early age.
It's so critical and so important right now. What is the most unexpected piece of advice that you've ever received that has served you well?
So I don't know if this is popular wisdom or not, but this is definitely something that I've used certainly in the 0 to 1 phase of building things from scratch, is don't ask for permission, asks for forgiveness later. And, I think that's really helped me, take some risks. Ultimately, you need to make decisions with incomplete answers. And the outcomes don't always go as planned. But what's more important is that you build that momentum and that you make that decision. So oftentimes, instead of waiting for permission to make those decisions, I've made the decision and sometimes had to ask for forgiveness later on, which is fine. Again, like I said, humility is also an important trait. But oftentimes things have also gone well. And I'm glad I had taken that risk.
Just jump, just go for it.
Just go for it.
If you feel it, then you need to do it.
I mean, you cover your bases to the extent you can, but it's never going to be 100% perfect.
Of course. And finally, I want to ask you about what you're excited about next.
So if I think about my career in the same way that we talked about company building, I would say, I've done the 0 to 1 phase, and I always, like I said, I love the 0 to 1 phase, and I think I'll always be building new things. And I especially as I talk about the thing that I'm passionate about, which is this missing middle and diversifying the capital stack, I think there are a lot of platforms that can be built in this missing middle to plug the gaps that we see over there. But also, I think personally, growing into a new chapter of my own career, my own professional life, where, I've done the 0 to 1, I've done the 1 to 10 of taking an organization, institutionalizing it, and now I'm in the 10 to 100 phase. And I think even the 10 to 100 phase requires a new skill set that I'm learning as well, because it's no longer about building new things or growing platforms. It's really about how do you ensure that it endures? How do you build a legacy? How do you ensure that these platforms that are now in place are going to be passed on and going to be still relevant in their own way? You talked about AI again, that they're constantly adapting to new realities, whether it's in the UAE or globally, and that it's prepared for the next generation. And I think that requires a different mindset when you're thinking about legacy, because you're not thinking about what am I going to do next year or what am I going to do in the next 3 years. You're thinking decades down. You're thinking about the third wave, really, or the third horizon. And I think that's a lot longer term.
Take me back to the magazine cover.
Yes.
What's your magazine cover 10 years, 20 years from now? What does that look like
Sheraa?
for you?
I mean, I think I would still come back to, again, the people whose lives I've impacted. I don't think the magazine cover is about me. I think what I'd love to see is how the various organizations and the various causes that I'm part of and will hopefully continue to be part of have changed lives. And so for me, it's not one magazine cover, it's a series of magazine covers showcasing the products, services, the people behind these different opportunities that we've created. And I would love for them to not just, like I said, be born in the UAE, but to grow into global companies that can be used as a global standard where people around the world are pointing to that success story and saying that was made in the UAE.
Your Excellency, Najla Al Midfa, it is always such a joy, such an honor to have you, to listen to you, your passion and your experience over the last more than a decade, 2 decades, has really built the amazing things that we're seeing now. And we're so excited for the journey that is ahead and what's coming. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sally. It's been a pleasure.